It's 5:30 and I'd like to call to order the Curriculum and Student Development Committee of the Madison Board of Education. I'm Steve Pinn and I'm joined by the other members of the committee. On my right, Kathy Miller, and Mary Ann Connolly will be joining us on Zoom. We've got 3 items on our agenda tonight, and at this point I'll turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent to introduce the topics and our presenters this evening. So Gail.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time this evening. We do have a brief agenda, I think a smaller agenda than usual. The first agenda item, I have Michelle Horn here, who's the curriculum generalist this year for the district, as well as Christina Zaratny, who is our literacy coach for grades 4, 5, 6, 7 this year. I had to get that right. I had to think for a minute. Quite a few grades, quite a few buildings. I want to welcome them tonight, and they're here to talk about a different approach that we're taking on the grade 4 and 5 redesign of curriculum. The committee might recall that we were trying to make space and room for more instructional time for social studies and science in particular, and we were also trying to uphold the integrity of our math and ELA structures. So we took a step back in our work with grades 4 and 5 teams, and we did a couple different moves to make that happen for next school year. One, we took the social studies component off of the math and science teachers and moved that over to ELA. So now ELA team leaders, teachers will be teaching ELA and social studies, and then math will be teaching science as well as math. So we're taking away social studies from the math teachers. We're moving that over to the ELA. In doing so, we were looking at the new social studies standards of 2023 that got adopted. They're very specific in terms of social studies content that they want taught in those grade levels, which was unlike the last iteration of those standards. So we wanted to recalibrate where we were and do some movement around of where we needed to be. And that meant that some of our units could take an integrated approach or a more integrated approach between the 2 disciplines, but not all units. So that was quite a discovery process. I don't want to steal any thunder from Michelle and Christina, but I do want to acknowledge like that single statement does not at all capture the amount of hours and study that we put into trying to make this happen. So we're here to share with you kind of the different approach that we took on some of these units. They will come up before the board for adoption in June. So they'll be presented to the committee, but because they're a different design and an integrated design, we wanted to give you some additional information now as we're continuing to work on it. So I'll turn it over to my team.
I think I had spoken at an earlier meeting this year that grade 4, the theme for social studies now, according to the standards, is United States geography. So that was a harder match for sure. And I can explain a little more about that. And then grade 5 is migration and settlement, starting with the native tribes, moving to the explorers and then the colonies. And then it goes into the American Revolution and the US Constitution. So 5th grade, we had a little bit of an easier, I guess when we vetted the units, it was easier to find crossover between where we can match ELA and social studies. Geography is harder. It is harder. So basically, I guess it was maybe a month or so ago, a couple months ago, we met as a team with Kate Roberts. Chris Pagliuca was there and the coaches. We did a lot of legwork to kind of think about where we would see that match, what would be the best unit to do, because Gail said if we could just find one place where it could become interdisciplinary, where ELA could complement social studies and where social studies can complement ELA. So that was really how we looked at it. So for grade 4, we chose around their historical fiction unit, again, it being more complicated because it's geography. One of their units is called Regional Interdependence. And really what that looks at is the different regions in the United States and where change has happened. So people of importance, people that have made a really big impact. So in ELA, we're going to do a biography study. of different people using a series of books. And through the study of genre of biography, that will be the ELA side, we'll use people like Louis Armstrong, I have a list here, Jackie Robinson, Ruby Bridges, Teddy Roosevelt. So different people of different regions will be the social studies component, and the ELA component will be the study of biography. That makes sense. So there's still, yeah, it's called Change Makers, which I'm really excited about because I think, you know, the students can think about that and what impact those people have had of importance. There's still a lot of work to do. This is really much, it's in the draft phase right now, but Christine and I have been working side by side, as well as Chris, and kind of working out the kinks. This one was not as easy of a match like fifth grade. So Christina will go into fifth grade.
Yep. So for fifth grade, we also focus on the historical fiction unit, where their units now are migration and settlement, like Michelle said, and also the American Revolution. Do you mind just fast forwarding that? So our match is going to be the American Revolution to the historical fiction piece, which we'll have a whole class read that ties into the American Revolution. And then they'll also be doing some of their poetry work during that unit too, which is like the two voice perspectives, which fits very nicely with American Revolution. You have your loyalists and your patriots, and you can kind of go back and forth. So there's a nice mesh in between the two of them as well. It was a lot easier to kind of find this part of our fifth grade. It lended itself very nicely. But yeah, so we're working on the social studies components, and mostly the primary reading component is going to be the historical fiction unit that they currently do.
They do.
But it's not on the American Revolution focus. It was on many different time periods. So now it'll be more focused on the American Revolution. And that will also lead into book groups. And their book groups will also be American Revolution focused as well.
I wonder if you can elaborate on right now what fifth grade is doing in order to determine which will be the book title selection for the all class read.
Yeah.
Well, we did a lengthy kind of, I guess, you know, looking
Book
around
study.
to see book study, if you will,
Yeah.
of many different titles related to American Revolution, as well as the Lexile. That was very important to us because one of the things we've been working on in K3 and then up above is making sure that the text we pick is challenging students, that it's not an easy read, but that we're really helping kids kind of grapple with some of the complicated features of the text. So with that, when we looked at the whole list, it narrows it down to only a few that would be of, you know, I think importance and match for us, but also help with the social studies. So that was the other thing we had to look at. Would it help with this, you know, would it complement the ELA, would it complement the social studies? So we narrowed it down to a couple of titles. Right now, we're looking at a classic that's been used for a long time, My Brother Sam is Dead. And then another is Sophia's War. Both work beautifully for Lexile and for timeline, the ability to connect to the American Revolution and really use that as a resource. So right now, teachers are going to work on reading one this year to try it out. And they also are familiar with Sophia's War, so we're gonna have to make a decision. So we haven't yet done that, but it's, and that actually, there'll be a roadmap for teachers that lasts about 3 weeks in that whole class read, similar to what we do in middle school and in high school, so that we're starting to vertically align that whole class read. But whatever text isn't chosen will become part of book clubs. So we vetted it similar to, you know, the way we're looking for challenge and alignment as well. So
We get to read all the books.
Christina and I have been reading
A lot. I know, but if I have another book, my husband's like, another American Revolution book. I'm like, yes.
Never learned.
Yeah, it was that. So lots of learning, but I think that, and like Michelle said, we're gonna try it out this year and see how it goes and make a decision. And teachers are also having input as well.
So that's kind of a summary of how we're designing going forward for grade 4 and 5 social studies in ELA. It is a different approach. We are working our way through the kinks, as you can hear. Like this is, I don't know how many weeks, 3 months in, maybe 3 months in to get this far.
It was like,
I would like to just say, I'm super excited about it. I was here when teachers were social studies and ELA teachers back a while ago. It felt like a little loss even to myself, even though I wasn't in the classroom, but there's such a great cross-curricular opportunity that when you're a social studies and ELA teacher, both for writing, for reading, for nonfiction. So I am excited that they get it back, and I think some of our players are too. Like the teachers, I think, feel like, yay, we're getting this back, and we know how to do this. We can feed the ELA into the social studies and vice versa. So I'm excited, and I think teachers are too.
And coming from the class.
Virtually. So there is not a separate ELA and there's not a separate social studies. So is this, this class occurs every day, and how often?
Good question.
Does this happen?
So I have, part of what I've done this year is to work with the coaches in both math and ELA, as well as social studies and science time, to figure out how much time we have in a day, where related arts fall, subtract those out, where days where we have several related arts versus one related art period, truncate some of that time. So we have a guideline for teachers, pretty much a daily schedule, operating off of the number of minutes and helping them to designate how many minutes fall to ELA, how many minutes fall to social studies, how many minutes fall to mathematics, and how many minutes fall to science. Generally speaking, ELA and our social studies and science will be 3 days a week, where ELA and math will be 5 days a week. So because we have 2 days with double related arts periods, that's why it's a little truncated, which is why we're trying to find other ways to get instructional impact in there. We're also, as you know, working on STEAM curriculum for the science, to get more science instructional time in there. So it's a little tricky. We think we've made some headway, and you know, we certainly anticipate that there'll be strong units. So we'll see where we go. Good question though.
Well, obviously a lot of challenges, you know, I go back to one of your opening remarks, which is, you know, the standards are pretty comprehensive and there's a lot that is covered, you know, which is true of social studies and history. That just, I mean, the content just keeps expanding, and of course the demand, the need to cover that content when there's, you know, so many other things that need to be covered, you know, I can appreciate that challenge. You know, I also, I mean, just as a comment, you know, increasingly integrated approach versus separate subjects, you know, just in terms of how students take them in and comprehend them, that, you know, these things never exist in isolation. You know, so, you know, it's an approach that I think is really, you know, valuable and time tested. You know, part of my concern, I mean, I look at it and I go, there's some key things, you know, particularly when it comes to social studies. You know, we've been very selective in what we choose to teach young people in social studies in terms of being, you know, Eurocentric and so forth. So the whole business, you know, I look at the migration, you know, 5th grade migration westward, and the whole business of, you know, indigenous populations and where that fits in history, and the importance of our young people understanding a contemporary perspective on what actually happened versus what used to be the standard curriculum that really never touched it. You know, I mean, I wonder about, is there opportunity to do service to that, and where does that happen? You know, is that part of the 5th grade curriculum?
Yeah, we actually talked about
Grade,
that a lot.
and Chris, I wish he was sitting, well,
Yeah.
Maggie is sitting by my side, but he has a, you know, just saying, you know, I can kind of say what you're saying here. The idea is, you know, he's talked to the teachers, how could we make this less Eurocentric, and where do we start that conversation? And so that particular migration and settlement unit starts purposely with the indigenous people and moves to the explorers. And just that approach alone and how that looks, and they're learning about different tribes. That's starting to come together, that unit. I actually can't wait to share it, but kids will be learning about various tribes along different regions, women in the tribes, their role, children in the tribes, what it's like today, because those tribes are still existing today.
Right.
So thinking about the contemporary piece, so all of that has definitely been part of our conversation, and the resources around that to teach it are more current. So you might, it's life in the past versus life today, and how, they're still here, so. I think we're trying to do it justice, and obviously it's part of the standards, it's deep into the standards, so we are really being mindful of that as we're creating the curriculum together.
And the integrated unit too, we're talking about perspectives, so we're also talking about like what perspective maybe isn't always shared in the American Revolution, right? So like the women's perspective of what's happening, what was their role, with slavery role, like there's lots of different things that we're looking at too to kind of integrate into that as well.
That's, and that's the challenge, as you're picking key biographical figures. You're picking some, but you're also not picking some.
Right.
That's always a challenge. I know, the list is endless, but it's like you have to narrow it down, but you're right, you hope that you're including everyone's voice as much as you can.
We hope book clubs also help with that, because
Mhm.
that's also part of self-selection and expanding, and we do that as regular practice, starting in those grade levels and going up, so. Time is finite, and there's just such depth that you can go into. And I kind of go back to our capacities, and we really anchor ourselves in those capacities. The profile of a graduate is the dominant piece that helps kids to have that rich, expansive view. So we go hard into that. I'm gonna say again, locally developed curriculum allows us and really calls upon us to do that. Where if you buy a textbook, you are limited to the perspective that the textbook offers, so. Once again, I think it allows us to really go into what's most important. For
When I'm assuming, based on multiple presentations we've had, that in the ELA, social studies, integration, there's opportunity, for small group discussion and, young people grappling with ideas and all of that,
My literacy spidey brain is like all
We saw
over
that bubble
this.
over there.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like that whole idea of perspective and how like old newspaper reporting and how it used to be and how it is now, and what was like and what was different, and that, just newspapers alone or magazines or any sort of periodical that could be text as well,
Sure,
like,
absolutely.
so when you're looking for books, it's like, you can also think about
Yeah.
using newspapers
Yeah.
and
Great idea. Yeah.
pulling out old archivey stuff and going over to the Beinecke Library at Yale, and like, just really, like, I'm salivating. I'm salivating.
Come join us.
Wish- I'm like, what, like, even like Sears catalogs and
Yeah.
like the old stuff that they used to, like, what kinds of
Yeah.
things were they
Yeah.
buying and why, and and
Cultural.
were they, female or male centric, and were everyone's needs met, and well, let's just go after this and like into like one of the rooms. And, like,
Yeah.
but it's just yummy work, and
Yeah.
we're so lucky. We're so lucky and blessed to have you guys sitting down to think about this in terms of what you could give our students and how to lift the level of where we are to like every time somebody sits at this table at a curriculum meeting, it's like, how did we go from what, like, blown away to wow, even more blown away? And I can't tell you how lucky I feel and how glad I am for our students that live in this town that get to have the opportunity to go through and enjoy and experience this curriculum and our curriculum, and I appreciate it so much. So thank you. It's hard work. Make it sound like, oh, I'm so good. And it's like, it's just like you go to bed thinking about it. You wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about it. If you had like paper in the shower, you'd be writing, like, I know what it's like, but it's fun and it's good and it's all good, but that's why we're gifted with you both and with teams that you work with and the teachers who are willing to switch out of like what they teach for something brand new and not saying, I'm out of here. I already have my, like it's just so refreshing and lovely and boy, are we lucky. Thank you.
Yeah.
More work to come.
Yes, well, I'm just,
Mary Ann, I see you online, and welcome. Do you have any, comments or
Yes.
anything you want to add?
No, I just thank you. You guys do a great job. Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
First of all, I apologize for being late. Been getting some calls on Board of Ed this afternoon, so maybe late. One thing that I've noticed that we've done very well as a district is the interdisciplinary and integrated model that we use across all the curricula. Like when we made a big push to integrate social emotional learning into like across the curricula and vertically across the district. I occasionally hear joking from my kids and also realistically from some parents that, well, the kids don't learn penmanship anymore and they don't even learn computer keyboarding anymore. I mean, the kids are responsible for knowing so much and they have access to so much information so young that it's almost like it's the challenge is, like Steve said, is to cram everything in so that we can meet our self-promulgated, profile of graduate requirements and so that we can teach students how to be in touch with themselves and self-aware and to be able to push themselves academically and persevere through things. And so with as much as is going on, I think one key that we've landed on that I love is this interdisciplinary and integrated approach because, you can study English, you can read a book, you can study social studies, learn about, and I was a history major, so that's my things, that's my jam. But, to have them cross-pollinated so that students are learning more things at once from each experience and compacting the lessons like that is helping us to meet the demand for what we're trying to teach them in the same amount of time that we had back in the 70s and 80s. You guys are very creative in how the curricula are grown like this to accomplish that. And it's just amazing, really good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next agenda item was actually in response to a request from the board to really take a look at our extended day programs and what kinds of programs are offered in all of our schools. So this is just kind of a high level overview of that programming and what's experienced on various levels. I'm going to start by explaining that our elementary programs, K through 5, are PTO run. PTO has done a fabulous job of really creating lots of opportunities for students in both of our elementary schools, as well as Brown School. They are kind of self-funded, and they do some outside providers as well as inside providers. So some of our teachers are providers. We always tease, certain members that they provide things before school and they provide things after school and during school, and it's just a lot. But where our grades 6 through 12 students mostly have district offered after school extension activities. Everybody, regardless of who's doing the offering, has scholarships available to them. So all schools offer scholarships. There is always the ability for a student to go to an after-school extension activity free or at a reduced rate, depending on need. So this is just kind of a capture of all of them some of the offerings at Ryerson. And you're gonna see that Ryerson and Jeffrey PTOs have different offerings. Some are similar, some are different, based on what they put together, the programs that they put together. But kids register online through the PTO, and they run in different sessions. So you'll see that this one is running, this is a winter enrichment class session that went from the end of February through April 3rd. Those are generally speaking our most popular sessions across the board because it's a lot of kids being inside for a long period of time. So they are chomping at the bit to do things outside. You see today's weather and you can understand that once the athletics kick in, our clubs are less popular. We frequently run them again and again, saying please sign up. But I think the kids are getting enrichment other ways through other means. This is Jeffrey's before school and after school workshop, offering from kind of the same period of time. You'll look at the end of February till the beginning of April, and you'll see some different names, some different sessions. Erin Chester, who you've met here a million times. I'm always laughing at her running into an 8 o'clock meeting because she has the Joffrey newspaper and they have to write the newspaper. And then after school, she'll do a running club. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Erin, I don't know how many other things you could do, but you can see things like you had mentioned cursive, that we don't teach cursive well. We do offer it in an enrichment club. So there are things that are pursued based on interest. And passion as well. So you'll see something even as fun as the Disney Club on this offering. Brown School, same kind of programming. Their programs, seem to be more led by teachers than outside providers, although some of these are outside providers. You'll see a variety kind of spanning arts, book studies, athletics, and then some interest-driven games like chess, and some outdoor adventures and indoor adventures. This again is the sampling from that winter session. At Polson, you can see they expand. They run all year as well as during sessions. So some Polson clubs run fall to the end of school, and some run in smaller periods. So this is again a sampling, but you can see kind of that idea of unified theater coming in and unified soccer. We have those in the elementary levels. All our K through 5 schools have unified soccer and unified sports, but we don't offer it as an enrichment club. We offer it as part of what we're doing, and every kid can sign up for that. And you can also see everything unified. Like, I don't know what that is, but it sounds great. And then when you go to Daniel Hand, there's so many clubs that they're actually on our website. There's a huge amount of clubs and descriptions of those clubs, as well as our athletics offerings. And of course, for students at Hand, it's a little bit different to participate in a club because they are trying to also build a rich and expansive background for college considerations. So the game changes a little bit on clubs. It's not just for pure enjoyment. I think part of it is interest and tapping into what they might want to do in the future, as well as the athletics that they're already invested in, or the drama that they're already doing, or the music that they're already doing. So those clubs are a little bit briefer in terms of length of time. They're generally 45 minutes, and they run kind of a crossover between the end of the school day and tapping into like before sports begin. So it's kind of a fine line that they do. But some of them involve weekend stuff, some of them involve travel. And they also have various Saturday workshops that they do. I'm trying to think what the multicultural club date was. Was it April? It was just
saw it this morning. It was
May 17th.
May 7th.
May 17th.
Yeah, Saturday 11 to 2. Daniel Hand Multicultural Club, the Diversity Club, and one other club are teaming together to hold a Saturday event and bringing in food trucks and vendors and doing some presentations from the students. So it's first time, and they shared with the PTO this morning. So it's really
They're very enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, very excited about it.
Yeah.
So I'll get that out to the board so you can attend if you'd like. Yeah.
So the business of community service on the high school level? Is this one of the locations where that would be manifest or no?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah,
could
there
connect,
is.
yeah, so it wouldn't be the time right after school, but if they do something related to one of the clubs on like the bike club clearing a path. You know, in the woods or something like that, that could be an environmental club doing some work, so yes, absolutely.
It's there, and it's also part of various curriculum.
Right.
Not as a mandated, you have to carry through this whole community service project, but I was just doing a deep read of grade 10 English. And the conclusion of grade 10 calls upon students to create a service action project. Doesn't mean they have to do it, it means they have to think about the impact on the community and what they would do. So that is one of their projects. So I would say that kind of impact happens both ways. And I would also add that our independent study class many times has that component. Yeah, so kids many times will ask to come before the board or asked to have an audience with Dr. Cook and myself, or a community member where they built something or they have something to contribute. So I think there's lots of opportunities. And the thing that I like about it is that where some districts made it a mandate and a graduation requirement, when we have community service, it's not because you have to, it's because you feel the need to and you feel a desire to.
So, because because of the transition into next year, we're gonna have pre-K to 5 in the same building. Do you anticipate that the programs for 4 and 5 will still be available?
Actually, I think that my understanding is that some of the 4th and 5th grade PTO members are very interested in doing kind of co-curricular 4th and 5th grade after school things. So I don't know if they've quite arrived at what it's going to look like, but our PTOs have done a tremendous job with it. I do think that they'll probably look different for different levels. So you certainly aren't going to have a kindergartner in the same club with the 5th grader typically. So they'll probably ban things.
Yeah.
But there's also a bandwidth of space and time and how many people you can have. So I think the sessions will probably be the thing that runs too. I would guess.
It looks like that's how it was,
Yeah.
for Jeffrey and they have them banded
They
as
had some
2,
bands.
3 or 1, K1.
Yeah.
But I am happy to see that there, there were some related arts type, creative outlets for the kids in addition to the curriculum. And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to see the after school programs as a board. We wanted to, as the curriculum committee, we wanted to assess that, with the changing model, if there's gonna be some like enrichment,
Yeah, I think the PTOs have done it for, I don't know, as long as I remember.
My kids all.
Yeah, and really in my building prior to being here, PTOs did a beautiful job, so. They're usually attuned to the changing interests of young kids, and they're changing. As well as, I think the high school is also built upon what we have and what they know kids are interested in. In that list, it doesn't show, but our Fab Lab is open as a club
That's
after
great.
school, so the
That's
kids
awesome.
can go then.
Yeah.
If they're into something that they're doing and they need more time and space to do it.
Well, the district offered opportunities 6 through 12. That's paid for by stipends, district stipends, or a combination of PTO, or how's that paid for?
District.
Some of it, there are some programs that require students to pay a fee, and as Gail said, if there's any issue with paying the fee, we make sure that the principals have money to be able to cover that. We don't want a kid to not participate because of money, and they put that out pretty regularly. But yes, some of the 6 through 12 that are paid by student fees. Some are, board stipends, depending on the category it falls within.
And I know TJ has said often kids will come, his door is open if they have an idea for a club, no matter what it is, and they can find a teacher who will be their advisor, then he's willing to hear it out and add it to the list of clubs. So it's, I've seen everything from like bullet journaling to, like they just really, and he's open to anything they want to do just as long as they have. Which means that every one of those clubs has a teacher advisor who's either coming early, staying late, coming on the weekends. I just wanna say how and for usually for nothing, so it's important for us to say that as well, how.
Actually, you could see in the beginning of those clubs, an ASL
Mhm.
club. So that, of course, is tied to the curriculum in a newer club based on students' interest in,
Yeah.
in building on their ASL course. Good point.
Baking for babies, right.
Mary Ann, any comment? Your mic is off.
You guys said it all. It's good.
Just want to make sure you're not left out there.
I know, no, I'm not left out. Thank you.
And the final agenda item is also just an informational piece. And this is a piece from the State Department. And I'm gonna start with kind of the Public Act. You'll see up at the top of the slide, Public Act 2493 requires the Department of Education to conduct a comprehensive audit of assessments that are administered to our students by public school districts. And the goal of the audit was to eliminate redundant assessment, discourage test prep, reduce testing time, maximize assessments for classroom teacher use. So this was kind of a big data collection, a huge poll. And I'm going to start with the center graphic to explain the various types of assessments. And then I want to explain kind of what it means in Madison, and then also share with you just kind of what that collection instrument looked like. So this is new. We haven't had this level of audit done before on districts. We haven't really done a deep dive into assessments across public school districts. The State Department, you heard in reading, requires all districts to do a state-approved universal screening in K through 3. So we have done that for many years. However, we decided to extend our universal screening using a state-approved product from pre-K to grade 8 in both math and ELA. So we kind of extended that requirement and really looked at data. And I think in prior sessions, I've shared with you what data looks like and what data visualization looks like and how our teachers use that. So moving in this direction from a universal screening piece, there are students who perform quite well on our universal screens. They don't require any kind of intervention or additional help. They're performing where we would expect them to. They move through the curriculum, and the curriculum that we have is a shared curriculum with shared assessments that teachers develop. So we have what's called an interim assessment or a formative assessment, where we're trying to see if kids are getting the ideas and the abilities and the knowledge that we want them to get by the end of the unit. So we use that formative assessment. In our teacher groups, they look at that data, they make instructional decisions, they use it with coaches in their evaluation cycles. So that's all that stuff that helps us to know that kids are picking up what we need them to know to move on to that next more sophisticated piece. And then we have a summative assessment piece at the end of every unit that's a performance-based assessment. That piece, both of these pieces, look after both content and what we call capacities, that profile of the graduate capacity. These are usually very high level. Remember how we went through that DOK exercise in a retreat? So that's the depth of knowledge is the most sophisticated thinking. It usually requires synthesizing and analyzing and doing something new and unexpected as a product at the end. So these are what we would call common assessments. All kids get it in Madison, all kids get it, all kids get it. Because of our curriculum design, they have this and this as part of all curriculum. Doesn't matter if I'm a PE teacher or a music teacher or an ELA teacher or math teacher or science teacher. K through 12, we have common formative assessments and we have common summative assessments. Lots of districts don't have that because they might be working off of a textbook, or they might be working off of several different takes on a unit where our teachers design together and they assess together. If a student flags on a universal screen, if they have trouble with a concept that's a basic skill, then we want to find out more about that. So we go to a diagnostic. which means that we might take a small group of kids and we might give them another smaller slice of an assessment. We might say, hey, what is it that's tripping them up about word identification? We might want to know more about that. And we might put them into an intervention for a period of 6 weeks to see how they're doing and if we can build that strength back up in that universal screening. And along the way, we do progress monitoring, which means we take little temperature checks to see if they're actually doing what we would expect them to do in the intervention, and then they rotate right back through. So the State Department in this assessment said, tell us about all these different kinds of assessments in your district. And you have to report every single assessment that you give and every single common discipline and every single grade. So for kindergarten, you need to tell us if there's any common assessments, universal screenings, interim assessments and summative in ELA, in math, in science and social studies, in PE, in music and art. That's a lot. Same for first grade, second grade, third grade. Along with that, they want to know if there's any common diagnostic pieces, progress monitoring pieces that you're using. And they put that into a spreadsheet.
Scroll.
That is very long and comprehensive. They ask questions about not only what the assessment is, how your teachers use it, if they use it formatively, if they use it summatively. This is in addition. They do not need to know about the Smarter Balanced assessment because they require that. But if we gave an IEB, a practice assessment, that we're saying to teachers, you have to use it this way, you have to give it this way, and you have to use the information this way, we would have to list it on this. So for us, because we have common assessments, we really put our data on according to our design. So for all of those content areas, for all of those subjects, we said, yes, we have formative assessment. Yes, we have performance-based assessment. And we named some of the tools that we use for the other areas. But this is the first. We don't know when we'll hear from the State Department, or if we will, if they're just gonna kind of collect it and analyze it. But for a district with locally developed curriculum with all teachers around the table with common assessments, it is unique. And so it was a interesting exercise for us to do. For things that are standardized assessments, we don't dictate how teachers give an IEB for ELA or math. We just say, give IEBs, and if you use it as a whole class or if you use it as a teaching tool, that's fine. So that's not included on ours, but all of these other layers are. So wanted to let you know that because that is a new piece. We reported at the end of February on that.
So,
And how many assessments are we reporting?
Lots. Lots. So, we tried to give it a locally developed title. So we said performance-based assessments as one of our lines. And we said, yes, in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, yes, all the way up through 12, because they are all common assessments. And then we had to say in all content areas. So you can imagine that's, it's quite a lot. So we did, instead of say, end of unit assessment, one-to-one correspondence, picnic table, exercise grade 1. We didn't go into that level of detail. We went into our design and check those boxes that way.
What's the purpose?
So the purpose, as I understand it, is to help districts to see if they're over assessing or if they are running duplicate assessments, which I found interesting because in the beginning of the year, we looked at ELA in grades K through 3. And we sat down as a coaching team, as a vertical team with Dr. Rachel Gabriel, and we conducted our own audit because we felt that there was some redundancy with some of the phonemic awareness stuff that we were doing, some of the phonics stuff. So we did want to see if we were over assessing in those smaller slices because of all the work we had done on science reading. So we do our own internal audits, and we're also really purposeful about the way that assessments serve the students and how the teachers use them. And because the teachers design them, they're very clear on the purpose as well. I'm always taking a look and saying, are we giving too many quizzes? Are we giving too many of this? But that's part of our curriculum process as well, is that we go through everything.
Don't we also have, like, I know at the high school level, like in math or something, like, we have, like, not a quiz, like a pre-assessment before a unit to know,
Yeah.
like, the baseline for each student before they learn a unit, and then there's the summative after, right?
So that's part of our enrichment model in math, you're right, we do that in grades 4, 5, and 6 for mathematics, we do that pre-assessment, so that's on here. And how we use it is to differentiate instruction.
But, I mean, I'm a little concerned because it seems like from the language of the act that they're looking to minimize testing. But testing is what gives us data, and I know we rely on it a lot. Our students are still learning a lot, obviously, or they wouldn't test so well.
Yeah.
So we're able to integrate probably more testing than some other districts, but still.
I think we have more
Learn.
common assessments than a lot of districts. If you took a textbook and you said to each teacher, here's a textbook for history, and there's an end of chapter assessment, you might select 3 questions and you might select a different 3. You wouldn't put that on the sheet. The way we approach it is that we expect high level assessment and all kids get it and all kids are measured on that assessment. So that is certainly unique. I don't really know what will come of it. I don't think anybody does. I don't know if Dr. Cook has heard any.
Yeah, I would say too, this is an example of something that I don't believe the State Department asked for this. This came from the legislature. So I think they were probably concerned, and part of it state Department of Ed driven, that districts were over assessing. So somebody at the legislature got enough support to pass this. So they would do this audit and force the State Department to really look into that for districts to see how much assessment was going on. So initially, Gail and I had great concerns that a lot of the things that I think we do that connect all the Algebra 1 classrooms across the district that not every district does would flag us as being really high on the amount of assessments, but we got some greater clarity, and I think Gail worked directly with the chief at the State Department. So I think this is an example where something they were asked to do. I think they're trying to implement it as best as possible. I think they're putting some common sense behind it. It's a different area of the State Department. Their assessment accountability areas. I think works pretty well with districts.
I do think assessment is tricky, right? You want to get good information on kids. You want to make good decisions based on that information. You want to have good benchmarking data. But you also have to balance that with how much teaching time is taken away.
Yeah.
And there are some grade levels, I'll be honest, where there's a lot of assessing because kids have lots of little indicators. One of those is grade 1 reading, how kids progress in grade 1 reading. Well, there's lots of little slices of data that you take along the way to make sure that you're making really good instruction for those kids. So, I do think that it's always a balancing act, and, reporting systems do what they do to keep parents informed, but by and large, you really want the data to be used instructionally. That's where it's most valuable, is making good decisions for kids. Understanding where teams are.
Gail,
You can't be a mind reader in terms of the writers of this.
Yeah.
But you can look at process, which is part of what you're asking about.
Yeah.
From my perspective, with not enough information, it appears to be once more an effort by legislators trying to do something good with their level of understanding of what a problem is. And, there are lots of difficulties with that because there are philosophical underpinnings to this approach. And the philosophical underpinnings, from my perspective, is this. If you have a one-size-fits-all, primarily one-size-fits-all instructional model, then you want that instruction to be not interrupted And you don't need multiple assessments except perhaps at the end. Our approach is away from a one size fits all, which means, you know, we're gonna be diagnostic and we're gonna track individual students. In order to do that, you have to have a different model, which is the model that we operate from here in Madison, which is we're gonna do regular, that doesn't mean they have to be lengthy, but we're gonna do progress monitoring and really try and tailor our instructional model to where students are, you know. Unfortunately, the difference in those philosophy means you end up with a fairly onerous, large audit, and I have concerns about the ability of those to even interpret the data we have if you don't embrace the model. The other is the word that comes up on this all the time is common. And I can tell you from my professional work, first of all, rarely, despite the standards, do you find common curriculum across districts. It is classroom by classroom and who you have. So that one, you know, right there, so, you know, until you have a common curriculum, then common assessments don't really have much value, because it's, you know, it's this English class or that English class or whatever, so. My concern, I mean, you know, when I look at a medical model, it's like, you know, you don't see the legislator getting into medicine, trying to tell people how they ought to be implementing their profession. Except increasingly that is happening in this state, and this is another example of it.
And that's kind of why I asked, what's the purpose? Because I get the
Exactly.
purpose, but I feel like, the state hasn't always been transparent about where are we going next, or maybe they don't know. And so I wonder why, I mean, there's been so much change and specificity around how to teach reading to everyone in the state. Now I'm worried that now it's gonna be, and this is how you're gonna assess.
And this is what you're gonna teach to.
Exactly, and this is what we're going to use as the basis to push this one size fits all in math and then in science. And there's, you know, creep there on something that we already find abhorrent in our on our board and in our
It's a
district.
tough one, you know, if it, I mean, you want, I mean, I'm speaking Steve Penn person, not board member necessarily. I want to speak to my legislators and say, you know, please understand fully before you approve and get behind plans that you counsel with educators to get a deeper picture, because on the surface, people, the general public and legislature would say, you know, we want kids to experience instruction from their teachers and not spend all the time in tests. Well, you know, that's a true statement. Anybody would support that. But, you know, if you take a simplistic approach on that concept and then translate it into, you know, policy, you run into dangers. So anybody.
And when you get districts that are capable of working at the level where they can, you know, they have the luxury and the capacity to collect data and be data driven in their curriculum cycle approach. You know, it's powerful and it's more helpful. And, you know, to discourage that, it seems to me, it would be forcing a district like Madison to fight with one arm behind our back.
Well, we've been fighting like that,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's not any change, it's just more of the same, and that's, you know, unfortunate, but I worry about what this means.
And again, I have no problem. But I have less of a problem, I should say, with these audit approaches and this monitoring and hyper management from the state. As to what goes on at the local level, if districts that have proven their, you know, their ability to teach their students well.
Start from the
have an
outcome and
exception.
work back. Right?
Yeah, that they're exempted from having to respond in some way to this audit. We've shown we're doing well. give us a break type of deal.
But
And then if we
historically-
fall below the line, then we have to follow the rules for a while and do the common approach for a while till we come back up. But, I just think one size fits all is okay to a degree. It's just problematic when it lowers capacity for high performing districts instead of allowing them the freedom to do what they can do.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what comes of it. I know that in the past collections that they've done, part of it is being very public facing. So that's been a lot of the prior collections. We see that on all sorts of dashboards from the State Department. And honestly, I think that the state of Connecticut or state of Massachusetts has done an interesting job of kind of making different programs and different practices transparent while recognizing the differences between implementation. Different townships to different townships. And in that way, I think it's more of like a resource, if you're looking for an answer to a question. As a practitioner, kind of breaking down the walls of practice, I think is a good thing. And we always grow from other people. Usually I'm picking up the phone or I'm calling or emailing questions or we're surveying each other. So if that is one of the outcomes, then that's great. Hopefully it's not more translation and oversight that might be misinterpreting the practice. So I'm trying to be very positive and optimistic and hopefully, it will be more of a collection that we can all learn and grow.
But as a practical matter, who compiles the data to respond to that large
So
audit?
for us, districts handled it differently. Some of them didn't know what the common assessments were, so they passed them out to all different departments. We have a very clear criteria in curriculum design. We know what they are. We have documents that are very well organized. So myself, Ching, Sheila, and Michelle sat down and we went through our criteria for curriculum design and we filled it out. And that's how we submitted it. Certainly I shared it with the other departments in my vertical meetings, showed them what it was. They were all very grateful. They didn't have to fill it out. So.
Not bad.
Well, and at the end of the day, these mandates come with a cost and, if you're paying people for their time to do some of this compilation, then, you're either paying more than you had budgeted for because this was, handed to us after the fact of when we developed our budget, or you're asking those staff members to do work that they weren't originally intended to do, and so you're taking away from something else.
And it was the latter, it took days. I mean, Gail's being modest, I think, they were in the conference room together for mornings. I thank goodness they didn't do a full day, I don't think. But I know they worked separately on it too, so they spent a lot of time on this. And that's what we always talk to the legislators when we're at those breakfasts or anytime we get the opportunities. Everything you ask for has a cost, and they're gonna say, oh, this is no cost. Look, they just filled out that chart, but that's not data we just click a button and it prints out for us, and there had to be Zoom calls with the state to get more information because I think their initial communications were unclear, so I think there was a lot of work that went into that. The days of 4 people, together, so.
We love spending time.
And there's another side to this one, so another conversation, but. There's an opportunity in all this. I mean, I wish the state could understand. When you look at the software that Madison uses to be able to track how students are doing. It is so comprehensive and, so accessible that, teachers and coaches and principals can really track how subgroups are doing and individual students are doing. The power of having access to that kind of, here and now data on how students are progressing has huge power in terms of adjusting and shaping instruction. So there's a whole other side to data collection in terms of what is the power and the use and the value of data in the hands of teachers. So I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, but that's where the data goes.
Discussed you.
Mary Ann, anything? Microphone?
She said no,
Thumbs
I'm
up.
good.
It's good.
She's good.
Give you a thumbs.
Good, everything you guys, great.
Any public? Okay, barring any public comment or any other comments from committee members, we will turn.